Okay.
Okay, we're going live. Awesome. Awesome. We're just preparing the live stream. We're going live. All right, live on Facebook. Welcome everybody to EmpowerHub. So this is an offshoot of the Prince George Small Business Network. This is your opportunity as a member of the network to jump on here and let's have round robin conversations about what's going on in our business. Lori and I are happy to start this process out just to get you guys familiar with what our vision of what EmpowerHub is about. And we'd really love your participation. And if you can't participate, we totally get that. You can watch it as a replay. But make sure that you submit some questions, right? Make sure you submit some questions. So, as we're talking about challenges in our business, and today's topic specifically is around profits and cash flow, that we can make sure that we answer your question. Because, as small businesses, lots of times we have lots of questions and we don't know where to go. So Lori has tons of experience in business, has been in business for herself for over 20, 25 years. Mm-hmm. Me personally, I ran my own concrete company in Vancouver, BC for 25 years. I have tons of construction and business background, currently acting as an international business coach, so both Canada and the US, servicing over 30 clients. So, I'm talking to people daily about growing their businesses. One of the subjects that let's just take a breath there for a second. Welcome, Lori.
Thank you, Carol.
Lori, would you like to introduce yourself for those people that don't know you?
Okay, well, I'm Lori Niedermeyer, and I own Tricatcher Therapeutic Services and Lori Niedermeyer Holistic Coaching, Life Coaching. So I have been in business off and on for the last 25, almost 30 years now. I can't believe I'm the one saying that, but yeah, in various endeavors. And so Carol and I got together in the spring and decided that we were going to keep the luncheons, small business luncheons going, because we found that there was so much value that was available there. And in order to grow the network and support people that are here in Prince George with small business. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. I was talking about you and your equine field facilitation earlier today, spreading the word, because as members of the network, as we get to know other members of the network, when we hear people needing that service, we recommend other people in the network, right? Mm-hmm. And we talk about all the wonderful things that we've heard about them through stories that they've shared about themselves in the network. So I was sharing some of your stories about some of your successes with the equine field facilitation in your horses. So we were talking about that early today. You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah. And that's what we do in the network, right? But we also grow together, right? And that's what EmpowerHub is about. It's about feeding off of and utilizing other people's experiences within the network to really start to help us grow our own business. So, and I know that you're very free and open with the information you have. And I like to think that I'm very free and open with the information I have today. So today I'd like to talk about profits and cash flow. I'm sure that nationwide and internationally, specifically in North America, we've been struck lately with some higher interest rates and maybe people trying to cut corners and do things a little bit, I don't know if this is the right way to say it, but on the cheap, right? They're looking for value and they're looking for deals because maybe their interest rates have affected their mortgage payment and, they're having to pay more to their mortgage and they're not necessarily selling anymore or getting paid anymore. So, when we see these types of things happen in any industry, we have to sit up and pay attention. And as business owners, we have some responsibility to our own business to make sure that when, these ups and downs in the economy go more to a place that is beneficial for all of us, when times are good, right, we need to be able to make it through some of the tough times so that when times are good, we're there to service people and get busy. So some of the things that are really important when we're talking profits and cash flow is to really understand what your profit and loss trends are. I'd be really curious to know of all of our clients in business. First of all, it might not apply to everybody because, as a solopreneur, me personally, I still do all of my own bookkeeping, right? Because honestly, I just don't have a whole lot. But I'd be curious with our members that do say $150,000 a year or more, and maybe have some payroll and stuff, how often they actually generate their own profit and loss. Do you do yours annually, Lori? I know you're a solopreneur as well.
Yeah, right? I do. I mean, I keep everything. I know, I've got, like everybody else, I got the water receipt sitting somewhere, although I'm more organized in my older years that they've all got, file folders so that it's somewhat organized, so that when I do sit down and do it, I start generally about this time of year where I'll sit down, when I have a few quiet hours, and I'll start entering the stuff into a spreadsheet that I send to my accountant, and God bless her, she just does it all. So yeah, I don't have to worry about it too much.
Right. And it's really good that you do that. So whatever your system is, right? Like me personally, so again, I work from home, just like you, we're allowed to write off a certain amount of our mortgage interest and, our hydro bill and all that kind of stuff. So I, like you, I gather all these receipts. I pay them monthly, but I gather all the receipts. And at the end of the year, we do the final calculation. Right. So what this all kind of leads towards is we can now start understanding month over month, at the end of the year, we can look at it, because even though we have we don't lump sum, or we shouldn't lump sum some of our expenses, right? We're going to enter the Fortis bill for December and January, February, March, and April. So we can start to see the trends, right? We want to enter our data so that we can utilize our data. So, your profit and loss, when you start to compare them month over month, even if you do your stuff annually, you can still go back to last year and pull a profit and loss month over month, right? What starts to happen is you start to see your trends, right? You start to see the months where you start to make more money, and you start to see the months where you start to spend more money. Now, some of our members might be seasonal, right? And I know you used to have a very large dog sledding kennel in Western Canada, and I'm sure you had slower months, right? So that would be a downtrend, right? It'd be a downtrend, but your kennel was specifically towards dog sledding. So, when we weren't having the melt or the freeze or the thaw, you probably saw an uptrend, right? So what is the value of knowing when your business or how your business typically trends? Do you have any thoughts on what the value of having that knowledge is?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Because then you can plan. If you look at where your low spots are and leveraged against what your higher months are and those trends, you're able then to sit back and try to evaluate where and how you might be able to pick up business in those slower periods, right? So instead of going, oh, well, no, we're doing great now. And I mean, seasonal businesses suck the big kahuna, trust me on that one, because you're so weather dependent. But, yeah, I mean, we had years where we started doing tours in November and we didn't stop until May. And then we had other years where we were lucky if we started just before Christmas and we ended at the beginning of February. So how do you balance how you're going to, what you earn in that 2-month or 3-month period of time with how your operation, or, in the case of if it's a farming or if it's a seasonal business, how you're going to cover all your expenses for the rest of the year, because it's really hard to sit down and pinpoint that budget to fine tune. This year, I'm going to do this much. And yeah, you know what? I'd love to do that. However, reality says.
So what I'm hearing is, even though in your seasonal business, your start date of that season and your end date of that season might fluctuate a little bit depending on weather.
Yeah.
You as a seasonal business could pretty much guarantee December, January, and the first part of February was going to definitely be an uptrend.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you knew after the uptrend, and again, depending on how long the thaw lasted and how much snow there was, that downtrend might start as early as mid-February, might start in April.
Yeah.
And those are the trends of the seasonal business, right? But the trend of knowing you're busy December, January, and the first part of February, that was an overall trend, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
as you start to track this information, and your profit and loss will show you, you hit on it perfectly, is where are the gaps and what can we do now to anticipate that? Yeah. Right? That thing that's going to happen in the future. Like when I was in Vancouver and I had my concrete business, seasonal, so usually we were wrapped up all of our contracts by the end of November. So December, January, and part of February, we had nothing to do. Quite often, I actually went and got part-time jobs, you know, whatever, just so we didn't have to dip into our savings, right? Yeah. Just kept groceries in the fridge. That's all it did. So we knew what our trends were. The other trend that we used to have is right before property tax time, we would see our sales dip, right? So we started to notice this trend, and what we were now able to do, and data is everything. Now that we knew that that was the time of the year where our business would dip, we could now start 6 or 8 weeks prior to that, you know, whatever your lead time is. Ours was 6 to 8 weeks. You can now start 6 to 8 weeks offering a value add, right? So if you know that's coming and maybe your client wants a discount or something like that, one of the strategies I used to use was I'd present them with the numbers and they say, oh, you know, do you think you can do a little better? I would go, right, this is a guy that I want to put in that dip. So I would say, I can. This is what it looks like. You're going to have to wait till this time frame, and I give them a 2-week time range. Right. That we will do it there, and you will. And what I used to do is I'd price it normally, and then I give him a discount if he would leave my sign in his yard for a very specific amount of time. Because that discount now that I gave him was a write-off for me. Right. Right? And I would enter it into my book as such. So let's take some simple numbers. A $2,000 job, right? Say he wanted a 10% discount. I give him $200 off, right? And it would say, must keep sign up for 3 months, right? Yeah. So when it comes to the accounting, I book it in as a $2,000 sale and a $200 marketing expense, right? For the grand total. And then I give him a 2-week window saying, we will install your project within these 2 weeks, which was my gap. Yeah. So not only did I get my full price, less a little bit, but the guy's going to keep my sign up for 3 months. So everybody driving down his street is going to know where he got that work done. Yeah. And I filled my gap. If you don't track these trends, you don't know where your gaps are. How can you fill them? Yeah. Right? And just to kind of close this loop, the other trend that I used to always have is right before the kids went back to school. Everybody's buying notebooks and laptops and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Again, mid-August, my sales would dip. Yeah. So same thing. My product was a luxury product. My product was not a need. It was a want, right? So I knew that people calling me wanted my product. Yeah. So if they wanted a discount, again, at that time of the year, I I would utilize those same strategies. So when we talk profits and cash flow, looking at your profit and loss month over month to start to track some of your trends.
Mhm.
Now, your trends might be different than my trends, but we're always looking, the trends are what are the year over year highs
Mhm.
and what are the year over year lows,
Right.
right?
Right.
So we've talked about a strategy of how to fill some of the lows. How do we take care of some of the highs, right? When we're
Mhm.
like sometimes when we have highs in a business, it means we have potentially we have too much work,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And what are some of the pitfalls when we have too much work?
Burnout.
Burnout, absolutely.
Yeah.
Clients' files don't get completed on time or
Yeah.
accurately. We
Yeah.
miss stuff. Stuff falls through the cracks, right?
Mhm.
Sure, we're making some good money and we're clipping along, but we're busy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, to shave off some of that arc, we can utilize some of the same tools,
Mhm.
right? You can present your client with an estimate. I'm really super busy right now. I would be happy to give you a 10% discount if you're willing to push your project to this point in time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Or the other thing, so the other part of my strategy was when I came out of this downturn, again, my product was a want, it wasn't a need. It always signaled me to increase my pricing.
Mhm.
Right? They want it. They don't need it. We've just come out of what is typically a low trend for me. Let's test my pricing.
Mhm.
As I increase my pricing, that's going to shave a few people off that top point.
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of people don't understand that, you know, when you're in business and you're busy, right? We've got lots of projects. We're not necessarily making a lot of money.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
So as we shift ourselves to make a little more money, we shift ourselves to do fewer projects, right? Do we have to adjust some of our language, some of our value positioning maybe a little bit? Sure.
Mhm. Yeah.
And again, as we test our pricing again, it might shave a little bit off and we have fewer clients.
Mhm.
Again, do we have to maybe shift our value positioning again? This doesn't happen immediately. This doesn't happen, you know, within a 3-month time period. This is slow shift, making more profit, doing less work, making more profit, doing less work, making more profit, doing less work. And then once we're at a certain point, and you know, we can definitely talk about what those points are, then we can scale.
Mhm.
Right? But so many people are doing so much work for not enough profit that if they would just increase their pricing just a little bit, they would reduce the amount of work they're doing and still make the same amount of money
Mhm.
at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Right? Right. So, um, so that wouldn't that be great to increase your pricing, reduce the amount of work you're doing, and still make the same amount of money?
Mhm. Oh yeah. I mean, ultimately, you don't want to be working yourself to death. You want that balance, right? And we talked about
Right.
balance in the last segment. So yeah, it's a great way to monitor and to find balance in your business.
Right, right. So the next question is how do we do that? Right? When it comes to profitability and cash flow, how do
Mhm.
we do that? How do we increase our pricing? So on our high times, we can reduce the amount of work we're doing and still make the same amount of money as if we were doing a ton of extra work. Well, there's a couple of key things that need to happen. So
Okay.
one of the key things is we need to understand our overhead,
Mhm.
right? So you've been in business a long time. Give me a summary of what you understand overhead to be.
Well, the overhead is all of your expenses, period, right?
Yeah.
It encompasses your rent or your lease space. It encompasses whatever your equipment is in the office, whatever your equipment is for doing the job outside of the office. If you have a job that is not, strictly in one space. It's the cost of your materials, it's the cost of your products, it's the cost of your labor, it's the cost of your utilities. It's all of it, right? It's all the expenses.
So your material and your labor and your products, I'm actually going to challenge you a little bit on those. So a fixed expense is an overhead. Okay, so you're right. It's your rent, it's your heat, your hydro, your water bill, your car payment, your insurance, your vehicle insurance and general liability insurance, property taxes, anything that you have to pay, whether you made money that month or not. Right? Cell phone bills, Google ads, all overhead, all fixed expenses. Right? So when you take your, and this is really good when you look at it as an annualized basis, because if you look at it as like a quarterly basis, sometimes the numbers can get skewed. So if you look at it annually, it's a percentage of your overhead versus your total revenue. So as an example, if you did in the last year, if you did $100,000 in sales and your fixed expenses were $25,000 in rent and printer costs and insurance and all the things we've already mentioned, that would be a 25% overhead.
Okay.
Right? Also included in the overhead is the owner's salary. So making sure that you as the owner is getting paid.
Is that what's supposed to happen?
That's what's supposed to happen, right? Because what we're always looking to do is we're looking to make sure the owner gets paid through the overhead, and then also charging on a per project basis for the technician. Now, sometimes the technician and the owner are the same people. And if they are, that means that you're making extra revenue that you can set aside in a separate bank account potentially, or track it separately on a spreadsheet. That's what I do, right? So that now you're seeing an accumulation of what you're charging out for the technician, right? You're seeing an accumulation of revenue there, so that in 3 months or 6 months, or depending on how busy you are, you can actually now start to actually hire that person.
Okay.
Okay. So if you're running a small shop, right? And I don't do retail as far as business coaching. I don't do retail, but say you're a marketing agency. I don't know, small business, right? And right now you're the CEO and you're running the small business, or say it's project based, right? As you're pricing out for those projects, you're pricing out for the technician. Right? So social media company is a really good example, because you have this person hired. The only reason you've hired this person is as a technician. They are servicing that client and that client and that client and that client. And their time needs to go to those projects. Right? It's not a fixed cost. It goes to those projects. And people that are running those types of businesses, that's the way they need to track that technician's time. Okay. We're not talking an admin, we're not talking a bookkeeper, we're talking like let's say a social media specialist, right? And they need to track their time to the project, so that we as business owners understand the cost. Right. It's not about accountability, although accountability definitely fits into that box. But it's about understanding the cost. If you had a cleaning company, right? Having your cleaners, you might hire them out for 8 hours a day, and they put 2.5 hours to that project, 2.5 hours to that project, 2.5 hours to that project, and a half an hour for lunch. Right? Otherwise, how do you know what your costs are?
Right.
Right? And this is getting down to the brass tacks data. Right? And when we have data, careful, are you all right?
Yeah, no, it's don't worry about it.
Okay, when we have actual data, when we get back to pricing our project, or pricing, whatever our clients come to us for, when we know our overhead, right? We know what these projects cost. All of a sudden, that is a whole different experience than going, I think it's worth this, right? I think I can get this much for that. No, that's not the way it works. When we're pricing stuff, when you're looking at profits and cash flow, we need to take into consideration, what is your overhead? What are the cost of goods? Of course, so there's your product and your payroll and your materials to go into the product, right? And then what is your profit margin? Right? Because here's the thing, when you have that data, first of all, when somebody asks you for a discount, it's now really easy to know, if you give them that discount, that discount actually comes right out of your profit. It comes right out of your pocket. Because just because you've given your client a discount doesn't mean that it costs you any less. Right? So that is your profit going right out the door. Now, let's look at this question from that point of view, through that set of lenses. So a customer comes to you and says, you know what, I really want to work with you. Can you sharpen your pencil? And now, when you're looking at your trends, I can sharpen my pencil if you put it over there. If you put it in the 2-week segment, because you know you're not busy in that 2-week segment anyway. I'd much rather do it for less profit and still be busy than not do it at all. But it has to be on my time frame, right? But if they want it done now, you know what your overhead is, right? You know what your profit margin is. You know what your material costs are. And then when somebody today asks you, hey, can you give me a discount on that project, whatever it is you're working for? And you know that that's going to come directly out of your pocket as profits in the business, it puts a whole new lens of empowerment on you. Does that make sense? When you're looking at things from a data point of view, rather than a feeling point of view, or I think I can point of view, it really empowers you as a business owner to know what you can and can't do. And if you decide to give them a discount, I'm not saying don't. I'm just saying know what your baseline numbers are. Know how much of a discount you can give them. If you have a 20% profit margin on your product or service, and you give them a 10%, you know, on a $10,000 project, that's $1,000, you know, out of your pocket that you can now be using to grow and develop your business, right? And that's what profits in the business are for, right? A profitable company, sure, you know, the owners get dividends. They work damn hard. They should get dividends, right? Out of your business. But that money is also there to grow your business, right? That money is also there in case of an emergency, right? In case of, you know, you and I probably both remember 2008, the stock market crash, right? Boom, you know, for a year. Well, it was probably even a little bit more than a year. We struggled. And I tell you, it was those profits that we had in the bank that helped us through, right? Not what we planned on using it for, not what we planned on using it for, but we had it. So fantastic. The other thing I highly encourage people to do is, and I don't know if you do this, is to use separate bank accounts. So as a sole proprietor, I get, you know, my payments come in. As my payments come in, I take my taxes right off the top. Like I do a percentage. 30% of this is going to income tax, right? 7% of this is going to GST. And I detail it out in an Excel spreadsheet, and I actually move that money from my daily business checking account to a savings account. I move it. Boom. So it's there. And you can have multiple accounts. So depending on how big your business is, depending on how much payroll tax you pay, move it all to a payroll tax account, right? So really strategically looking at your business and what do I have to pay now? What can I defer to later? If I have the money for that thing that's deferred, how can I better utilize that money now? Right? In Canada, we had the CERB, right? Or I forget what the business acronym is for it. But, you know, in Canada, a lot of companies were eligible for up to $60,000 in funding from the government over COVID, right?
Right.
Well, if you pay it back by, I think the date is January 17th, and we're actually anticipating that date's going to be pushed a little farther. If you pay it back by that date, you know, you get $20,000 free. Okay. Right? You only have to pay back 40. You don't have to pay back the whole 60. So, you know, as a business, I qualified for that, and I had the $40,000, and we sold our business and closed out a few things. So I just paid it. I got rid of it. For me, that was, we were closing one business, and it made sense. The responsibility of that business was to pay it back. So we did that, right? But for those of you that don't, and you have, say, $20,000 on a car loan, but you have the $40,000, there could be a potential, depending on what your cash flow and profitability are, is to take $20,000 now, pay off that car loan, so you're not paying, you know, crazy interest rates on it, and then use that car loan money over the next 6 months to put it back into your account, right, to pay back the CERB. So really strategically looking at your cash flow, and it's like, okay, how much money do we have now? What's the best utilization of this money so that we can, for example, cut the interest payments on this car loan, right? So when we look at profits and cash flow, you know, we always want to consider that kind of stuff. So let's recap. We've got overhead. We've got your is that one of the dogs?
No, it's me wiggling to be comfortable because I'm not comfortable today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's one of those things.
You did too much work this weekend.
No, right? It's the weather is affecting everything. So
okay.
Yeah, it's not happy.
Yeah. Prince George, we're a little bit overcast and a little bit cool. And I'm in Kelowna right now, and the same thing. It's overcast, and actually the clouds are starting to drop over top of Okanagan Lake. So we'll probably get some
gorgeous sunset. I don't know if I can turn this so you can see it. It's just stunning. I don't know.
I guess it's 10 after 4, I guess, sunset time, hey?
I don't know if you can see it out the window or not, or if that's too far away.
Yeah, it's a little bit too far away.
It's too bad.
Yeah.
Because it is like red. It is so gorgeous.
Is it? Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
But we always get nice sunsets here.
Right?
Sorry.
So yeah, that's
total
okay.
Sidetrack.
That's okay. That's okay. It's nice to have the reset. So, you know, we've talked about profit and loss trends. We've talked about calculating our break evens, right? Calculating our costs.
Yeah.
We've talked about the effects of increasing and decreasing our pricing, right? We've talked about how to fill those voids in the trends, and how to save on the top end, right?
Yeah.
Which you know, is all good things to know. So when we're talking about that, it also brings up what I call cash flow killers. So, you know, not right, not being able to identify your trends is a cash flow killer. Because you know, we've already talked about how we can use understanding the trends to fill the lows, you know, save the highs, and even out our cash flows. Giving discounts is a cash flow killer. Another cash flow killer is bad clients. Clients that don't pay their bills.
Yeah.
Right. So for those of you out there that are dealing with clients that are consistently at 90 days, dump them. Dump them as your client, because, you know, I promise you, hopefully, if that client's sitting on your books for 90 days, hopefully it's only a partial payment. Hopefully you received a deposit up front, you know, or you've got, you know, incremental payments or whatever it is you're doing. You know, like, again, let's go back to social media, right? Maybe we're building a website for somebody and it's a $5,000 deposit. And then over the 3-month build, you know, maybe it's $1,000, $1,000, $1,000, leaves $2,000 left as a balance at the end, right? So that $2,000 now hits 90 days. I want you to understand, and most business people understand this, but not all, and we are a small business network. I want you to understand that that $2,000 on the back end, assuming you've priced correctly, is your profit. Right? So making sure that you make time for accounts receivable, right? Making sure that you're good at contacting people and saying, hey, listen, you know, I'm not hitting the launch button on your website until that $2,000 is paid.
Yeah.
You know, we've lived up to our end of the bargain. We have fulfilled our contract. Now it's your responsibility.
Yeah.
So, you know, so making sure that we really deal with those deadbeat clients, right? They're our biggest cash flow killer. Yeah, and I think we've talked about already about all the other ones. And then depending on how big your business is, right, we want to really write down the strategies that work for us, right? Call it an operations manual, standard operating procedures. Do it in a formal document or do it in a checklist. I don't care. Because here's the one thing. Here's the one thing that you and I both know: employees leave. And if you don't have their process documented, how can you leverage them, you know, to make sure that you don't lose momentum moving forward, right?
Right.
So I know that you have some experience when it came down to creating systems in making sure that your dogs got fed, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't necessarily with employees. Would you share that story with us?
Oh, the military precision?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so it started out with me and 100 dogs. And how do you look after that, right? So it's not taking one dish and running out and feeding, you know, this dog, because they were in big kennel groups and they only got tied up at feeding time. So I had to develop a system that was going to work, because you can't, with that number of animals in that instance, you can't just go out with 1 or 2 dishes of food and expect that there's not going to be high holy hell and fighting going on. So how do you mitigate that? How do you not set your dogs up to cause all kinds of issues? Well, then it was a matter of, you got the dishes out, everything got dished up and stacked. We had an ATV with a trailer. So all the dishes got stacked up according to which kennel it was, because some dogs needed more food than others. And so they all got stacked up. We drove into the kennel, and then you went into each kennel. You started at the first kennel and you started tying dogs up, and you dropped dishes as you went, and you just went around the kennel and did that. And then as you finish dropping the last kennel's worth of dishes, you start picking up the empties now and unchaining everybody from the first kennel, watering, scooping poop, all that kind of thing. And you just made your way around. So that it was a 3-hour episode for me by myself. I had lovely help with my mother-in-law, and my mother, when she was alive, she came and stayed with us for a while and helped, which was hysterical because she wasn't an animal person, but she was in there doing it. And then when I had staff in the winter, and even clients wanted to be a part of it. So they, you know, they're coming for the experience, they're staying at the house, and they're just fascinated with the whole process and being with the animals. And in doing that with staff, we had it down to an hour twice a day. For me, it was 3 hours twice a day. And then when we had clients or I had staff, all the dogs got lots of extra love and cuddling and carrying on a couple of times a day, not just work, not just the dogs that were working. Everybody got attention. So in order to make sure that everybody got fed properly, you're hands-on every day. In a kennel operation, for instance, and people are going like, what the heck does this have to do with business? It has everything to do with it, because those animals are your income. And if they're not well, you need to know. And if you don't have that hands-on every day, which we did, you can't tell who's gaining weight, who's losing weight. And in a couple of instances, a couple of the girls went into a silent season, didn't know about it, and ended up with pregnant dogs and didn't know that they were there. It's like, wait a minute, what's this, right? So then you can manage differently. And yeah, I only had that happen a couple of times.
So your experience in systemizing that process,
yeah,
that was only through like learned experience, trial and error, learned experience. If you had talked to other kennel owners, could you have developed that process a little bit more quickly? Potentially, but not necessarily.
No,
right?
Because other kennels were, I mean, certainly the bigger kennels, smaller kennels, you know, it's 4 or 5 dogs, it's not a big deal. Like, honest to God, in your home environment, if you got 2 dogs, 3 dogs, 4 dogs, all it is time for grooming. That's the only difference. When you're looking at it in that herd mentality where there's so many of them, you have to make sure that you're looking after the animals in an appropriate manner. And lots of other larger kennels didn't even have that. I mean, they would just, you know, take the dishes out, toss the dishes down, and slap the food as they went along. So a lot of people fed a gruel, and so they would have, you know, on their toboggans or their ATVs, and they would just take this ladle and slap the food into everybody's dishes. And then not necessarily, like, part of the process for me, I was animal husbandry was always my soapbox. The dishes got picked up, brought back up to the house, and then they got washed, like hot soap and water, and dried and put away every day, every meal, which a lot of people found was a bit excessive. But again, you're feeding a large number of animals, and you got to keep things clean in that aspect.
Sanitary conditions, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, you know, yes, dogs eat other dogs' poop, and yes, dogs eat poop out and dead critters and all kinds of nasty stuff when they're in the trail. We're out in the wild. But you need to make sure that you're doing the best you can to keep everything clean and healthy at home, so that they stay clean and healthy. Like, that was always my thing. Yeah. So awesome. It's not, I need to reassure people right now, that's not my job now.
no, but here's
but
the
it
thing.
Was 20 years of experience. Yeah.
Right. And you started out where you knew, right? You started out, okay, Fluffy, here's yours, here's yours, here's yours, here's yours. But as your kennel grew and your business grew, that model no longer worked for you.
No, not at all.
So the systemization, right, the efficiencies in that came out of necessity and creativity, and not necessarily sharing your experience with another kennel and having their feedback, having them tell you how to do it, because it probably wouldn't have worked for you.
Well, no, and certainly, I mean, things are a whole lot different now because of internet and everything. But when I started doing the dog sled tours, the internet was a brand new thing. And in the dog sledding industry, people were not sharing information at all. Like, they weren't open to sharing information. And even today, you know, people is very guarded because of all the animal rights stuff and just, you know, crazy politics and stuff like that. But yeah, you couldn't leave. And I would be very open about every year having, you know, weekends in the fall where people could come where they wanted, if they were experienced or they were novices and never even seen a dog team before. If they wanted to learn, here, this is how we do things here. And because again, I'm very open. So it was, I wanted everybody that was interested to know that there are actually good ways to do things and safe ways to do things.
And then, so when it comes to your dogs specifically, you know, you had to feed them, you had vet bills, you had, you know, straw or whatever their bedding was, you know, you had those kinds of expenses. So were you one that, did you track your data specifically enough that you knew how much you spent month over month, that you could average out among the dogs? Or how did you set your budgets for that, like moving into your next year?
Oh, that was a huge learning curve too, because I didn't start with 100 dogs. I started with 6, then I went to 12, then I went to 18, and then I went to 24, and then I took over a kennel and I went to 40. So it was the learning curve on how much dog food I needed to feed in order to keep them in good weight and good condition, that kind of thing. So it was a big juggling match to get that aspect figured out. When we had 100 dogs, I would go through a pallet of dog food. So 20 bags of dog food every month.
Mhm.
Minimum.
Mhm.
And that was year round, right?
And so tying that back to cash flow,
Yeah.
right? That was 20 pallets of dog food every month, 12 months of the year.
Yeah.
And if you're making income for, say, 3.5 months in the summer or in the winter, 5 months in the summer,
yeah,
you had to make sure that your cost, what you charged people,
covered
yeah, the dog food for the months where you didn't generate a
yeah,
ton of revenue.
Yeah,
You know, again,
absolutely.
Frost, freeze, right?
Yeah.
So knowing that now, what is your perspective when you go into a small business and you look at something that you find appealing or attractive and you go, I would like to have that. And then you look at the price tag. How does that affect your decision-making process now? Knowing that for you, you had to buy a pallet of dog food for 12 months, even though you might have only generated revenue for 8 of those months.
Yeah. Well, it definitely had impact, right? Because there's not a lot of extras unless you're, I mean, it was the first couple of years bumping along, trying to figure out, how to make it all happen. Because yeah, you had your fixed expenses. And I think when I finally retired, our dog food bill per month was $2,000. That was year round. That didn't count to anything extra that had to happen. Bedding, thank God, I had enough experience that we did our own bedding unless it was major, and then the vet would be called in.
$24,000 a year just in dog food.
Just for food, yeah, and that didn't cover. It didn't cover the extra harnesses or collars or any of the stuff you needed to operate the business. So looking at that going forward, when I go in and I look at stuff, it really becomes when, and I want to support small business, and I still do to this day, and finances are not cheap, they're not easy, it's tight. And so it's like, okay, is that a need or is that a want? And if it's just a want, where can I juggle, and where can I figure out, you got advertising costs, you got all kinds of things coming up. So you got it. It's a balancing act, and it's
but
not
you understand from the small business point of view, why they're charging that price for whatever the thing is.
Yeah.
Which as business owners, I think gives us a huge new perspective on other business owners, right? And it gives us a real respect for what they're charging. How many times have you walked into a store with your girlfriend and your girlfriend looks at something, and I'm not talking like, what I would consider the obvious high price items like Louis Vuitton, right? I don't see how they can justify those prices other than people will pay for prestige, and they built prestige as a value piece in their marketing, right? So, I now go into a store and I look at their pricing and I'm like, wow, I now understand what goes into that. And the people that don't, what they say is, oh, that's so expensive, right?
Yeah.
And they put no thought into what's gone into the pricing and who that pricing might be supporting. It might be supporting a single mom with 3 kids, right? A single dad, whatever. Single mom with 3 kids, right? It might be supporting someone that has some medical issues and large medical bills.
Yeah.
Right? And their salary might need to be a little higher because they have to pay for meds that aren't covered by the medical system, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is he putting wood in the fire?
No, it's the wind. The windstorm we had over the weekend on the peak outside, and because you've been here on the peak outside over the deck, it's raised a couple of sheets of the tin. So now it's banging and crashing. So it's like, the dogs, or is that the roof?
Got it. Got it. So as business owners now, we have a whole new level of respect for other people's pricing, right? We have a complete, and to your point, instead of us just saying, oh, that's so pricey or something like that, we can look at it from the point of view, instead of judging the price, now to your point, you can decide, is this a want or is this a need?
Yeah.
And if it's a want, on what scale?
Yeah.
Right. So I think again, as business owners, it provides a whole other level of awareness around pricing.
Yeah.
Even if you just ask, who am I supporting?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Because you never know. You never know.
If you go to Starbucks, you know who you're supporting. You're supporting corporate. If you go to what's that beautiful little coffee shop up on the Heart there? If you go to a little local coffee shop, you know you're supporting your neighbor, right? And the coffee's pretty much the same price, maybe 20 cents different.
Yeah, yeah. And certainly in these times, those of us that do have small businesses, whether it's a retail outlet or whether it's a coffee shop or whether it is a therapeutic, massage therapist or something, our costs have risen like everybody else's exponentially. And our income hasn't, because we're all very aware of the fact that everybody is struggling. So, most of us are not raising our prices to our detriment. So it affects our profit and our bottom line. But we do that because we're small business and we care and we give back to to our community and to our other customers. So there's even days I walk in and I'll look at something and go, holy crap. Step back and remember where and how this is all, how this is put together and that kind of thing. So yeah. It's just the awareness level. You have to be a little more aware, right? We're not the big box. We're not Walmarts. We're not this, we're not Pattersons. We are independent individuals trying to support our families and our lifestyles.
Yeah, exactly. And hopefully the information that we've shared here today will help some of the small businesses in the network really, if they're not making profits and they're not making money, maybe give them a starting point as to figuring out how or why, right? Sales and revenue generation is a completely different subject. We're talking just profits, cash flow, pricing your product, and understanding what goes into creating that price, right?
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that, for anybody out there that watches this, anybody that's struggling, understanding, I'm doing all this work and I'm not making a whole lot of money. Hopefully we've given you some places to look at to make sure that you've included those costs and expenses into the final cost of the product or service that you're providing.
And to speak to that, most of our members are not big businesses. They are just started. Most of them are fledgling. Certainly the people that are coming to our meetings and stuff they're fledgling businesses. And those are ideas that, I was in business probably my first 15 years before I even understood.
Which she means the startup businesses.
Well, that too, but my first 15 years, if somebody had talked to me or mentioned just this, I would have gone, huh? Because I had no idea.
There's not a lot of awareness.
Being able to share this information like this for our new members and our new businesses, that are the people that are starting up that don't know about business, because God knows nobody ever teaches us properly. Don't be afraid of it. Now, at least you have an awareness of a piece that you may not have known before. And for God's sakes, reach out and ask somebody. I mean, Carol is a brilliant business coach. There are other business coaches and other personal coaches in our organization, in the group. So please reach out and ask those questions, because you don't know what you don't know. And if you're in business, you need to make sure that you're doing things in a way that's the most efficient and beneficial for you and your family.
Exactly. And that's exactly what EmpowerHub is about, right? It's about bringing up these questions. How can we do business better? I would love to have other people on the call so we could get crosstalk and feedback and, how does this work for you? And how does this work for you? But until we grow this, it's going to be you and I, and I am so happy to provide, just little pieces of insight to make some of these small businesses more profitable so they're around for a long time. Because when you have small businesses, you know, you're supporting the kids, the elderly, the single moms, the families, you know, the family on your soccer team, the family on your hockey team, you know, the lady in your curling team, right? Or pickleball or whatever. That's who you're supporting when you go and purchase their services, right? So, and equally, as a business owner, it's their responsibility to make sure that they're pricing everything appropriately so that their costs, their salary, everything they need from the business is also getting covered. So
absolutely
awesome. Great conversation today, Lori.
I think so. I'm just trying to see, because you and I had a conversation after our last one, I think it was, or me, I don't know. We talk to each other fairly regularly, and I don't have it right here. I'm trying to see. I do know. Oh, yes. On, I believe you had me, and I think it's kind of good to let people know what's coming up. So December 4th is our next one, right? That's next Monday? Yeah.
Yeah, every Monday.
You had asked me if I would do a presentation on imposter syndrome. So I'm pretty excited to say, yes, I actually have done some homework and I've got stuff written down about it.
Okay, fantastic. So, fantastic.
For those that are listening, if you've ever wondered what the hell imposter syndrome is, or you know what it is, and you are, you know, not sure how you can break out of that, join us next Monday, because it's going to be fun, I hope. Well, I hope these are all fun and informational, right? But yeah.
Well, informational for sure. That's our goal, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Lori, we'll leave it at that. Next week, we're going to talk about imposter syndrome. Love it. And thank you so much. And we will talk to you soon.
Okay, well, thank you, Carol, once again. And thanks everybody that can watch this or is watching it now or on the replay.
Yeah, okay.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.